Welcome back to this 4th District debate. The Trump administration separated migrant parents in 2017 during a program. Those parents did not have legal standing to enter this country, and they were separated from their children. The ACLU says as of today, 545 children still remain separated from their parents. The parents, they believe, have been deported. Their children largely remained in the United States. Nobody has been able to reunite everybody or find these parents here. Let's bring back our two candidates here in the 4th District. Mr. Schulten, let's start with you on this. What should happen now?
We need to end a lot of these policies that are just separating children from their parents. It's just awful. I mean, it goes against our faith as it goes against our values. And so we need to have comprehensive immigration reform. But I mean, to have children in cages, to separate them from their parents, that sends the wrong message. You know, if we have comprehensive immigration reform, common sense ideas coming out that's been talked about for years, I feel that we can really get something done here soon.
Comprehensive reform to you means what? What changes?
I think the first thing we need to do is keep the promise that we've given to dreamers. I think we need to, you know, we absolutely have to have a secure border, but at the end of the day, we need to, you know, have a visa program that matches our economical needs in the 4th District, and then a pathway to residency and a pathway to citizenship.
Mr. Feenstra, numerous national outlets have reported that this was an intentional strategy as a deterrent, that even though if you're talking about babies in some cases, the threat to migrants from elsewhere that they may be separated from their child should be a deterrent so you don't try to come in here illegally. Was that a wise one?
I'll tell you, this is tragic to hear, and we surely don't want that. We want to make sure that children are united with their families. I will say this, that we need to protect our borders. And we just saw this a week ago, and we had the largest shipment of meth ever come through our land across the border. That's scary. We need to know who's coming in and who's going out. And I've talked to a lot of businesses in the agricultural community, and what I believe we need to do is expand the H-1B program, expand the time frame of how long people can be here. I also believe I look back to my grandpa and grandma that came, and they were sponsored. They came here through a sponsorship program. And with the technology today, we can do this, that we can say, hey, a employer needs 10 or 15 workers. Why don't you sponsor them? And we can clear them at the border and get them here to do work. I mean, these are solutions. We can get it done. But I do say we first got to protect our border and know who's coming in and who's going out.
When you look at any reform, what would you sign on to? What do you agree with?
Well, like I said, the first thing has to do is that...
For those already here, I'm sorry. For those illegally here.
So what we have to do is create programs, more substance, H-1B program, and then also create a sponsorship program where they can get into a data website, they can get into a data site and say, hey, I can do X for this computer industry, or I can do Y for this agricultural community, and then they can be sponsored. It works. We have the ability to make this work.
But you're primarily talking about those who have not come to the country yet, though, right?
Again, we are a rule of law, and we have to make sure that we stand by the rules that we have on the books.
So if you're here and you're not here legally, you go back home and then go through the rightful process?
That is correct.
All right. Tim?
I want to ask you about our rural areas. Population continues to dwindle away in rural America. Nearly 2/3 of Iowa's counties shrunk in population over the past decade, and that includes many back in the 4th District. Name one effort underway anywhere in the district that is reversing that trend and actually leading to an increased population in those communities. Mr. Schulten?
What we're seeing in Jefferson is absolutely awesome to see. We've seen Forge, which is bringing technology into rural America. Representative Rokana has been instrumental with local folks on getting that in. And that's what we need. We need technology in rural America. This is something, I think, a two-prong approach of how we change the course of a lot of these towns and a lot of these main streets. The first thing we need to do, enforce our antitrust laws, allow farmers to be empowered, to stay on their land and make a dime. And then we also need to have technology in our district to allow folks, you know, what we see here in the pandemic, people can work from home, people can go back to the place that they grew up and work from there if they have quality internet.
Well, for the 4th District, we're the 2nd largest district in the nation when it comes to agriculture. Virtually everything pivots around agriculture. When our agriculture is successful, our main streets are successful, our schools, our hospitals, everything is successful. So what we need to do is make sure kids, when they get out of school, if they want to get into farming, that they know precision ag, that they can understand the new technologies, that we can match the skills that are being learned at the high school and college level, where they can pivot and get into our rural Iowa communities and work in that manufacturing facility, work in agriculture. It's all about putting the jobs that are out there with the skills that are required. And we can do this. Our community colleges, our liberal arts colleges are all working toward this. But again, it all starts with having a successful agricultural community. If we're successful agriculturally, we'll make sure our main streets and our hospitals and our schools are also successful.
Right now, a big part of that success in rural America is the renewable fuels industry. And unfortunately, in the 4th District, there have been ethanol producers that have had to close their doors this year. We've got a graphic we want to show you that takes a look at the production of renewable fuels dating back to 2010. And after steady increases in the production in Iowa and nationally, that number has slipped. And we certainly know it will slip again this year when we look at the 2020 numbers. There's not much doubt about that with some of the refineries that have been idle during the last year or so. So my question is, if elected, what legislation would you author to support renewable fuels here in the 4th District? Mr. Scholten?
I don't think we need to even do anything, because the mandate already says for renewable fuels is 15 billion gallons. This administration has undercut. 4 billion gallons have been completely lost. The rule of law, the thing that's already in law is the renewable fuel standard. And so we have, though, a group of senators from oil states that are undercutting this. And we have lobbyists. The administration is full of oil lobbyists and that are undercutting our ethanol industry. We've had 150 plants gone idle or close, and we're seeing corn prices depressed because of this. And so we got to figure out who our allies are. And you see people like Ted Cruz down in Texas. Randy Feenstra has had a fundraiser with $50,000 with Ted Cruz. I mean, how do you do that? How can you, this is the #1 district in America with renewable fuels, and you take money from the one guy who's trying to just destroy the system and destroy the industry. It's disgusting.
Mr. Feenstra?
There's so much that we can do with ethanol. There's so much. But first of all, what we need is an effective voice that sits on the Agricultural Committee that gets it done. What we need to do is, just like we did in the Iowa legislature, that I helped author and pass the bill to push from E10 to E15 to create more consumption here in the state of Iowa. And we need to create more consumption when it comes to around the country. We have to create more exports when it comes to ethanol, and we can do this by our new trade deals that we're making. We have to make sure that we expand the RFS, and we can do this. We can't just rely and say, well, 15 billion gallons is good enough. Oh no, we have to expand. It's the cleanest form of energy in our country. And I will advocate, and I'll be the most passionate person to grow the RFS, the renewable fuel standard, not from 15 trillion, but to 20, to 25, to 30 trillion. And I'll make sure that consumption, instead of having E10, that we move to E15. You have to think, ethanol, it's this little corn seed and biodiesel that packs all this energy, and all we have to do is squeeze it out. It's the cleanest form of energy in the country, and that's what we have to advocate for.
Aren't these renewable, these waivers rather, from the oil refineries largely in Texas, aren't they hurting us? And why is that happening during the Trump administration?
The great thing is that Trump stood firm and said, we're getting rid of the gap waivers. So 54 of them have gone away. I think we're moving forward, and we're going to see, we're going to hit in 2021 the RFS, the renewable fuel standard of 15 billion. But we have to expand it. We have to make sure that that continues to expand. I am absolutely against Director Wheeler for the EPA. I have called for his resignation. I believe that would be a start, is to remove Director Wheeler from the EPA.
Do you feel optimism for next year if the president's reelected, as Mr. Feenstra said?
Not at all, because we've already seen 85 of these waivers passed, and that's not even including the gap waivers. The gap waivers are, if I decide to threaten half of Sioux City to burn down, and then and already have burned the other half down, I shouldn't be rewarded if I don't burn the second half down. It's ridiculous. And so I've met with the California Air Resource Board. that entity dictates what's happening in the fuel supply almost as much as what's happening out in D.C. And they said that if we don't get to carbon neutral or decarbonize as a nation without renewable fuels, we don't get there with electric vehicles. And so we got to push for more pumps. We got to do things like that. But I mean, the best thing the renewable fuels can do is get rid of this current administration.
You mentioned early on that you are not in support of the Green New Deal, which would largely get rid of all fossil fuels entirely. So what do you say to those in your party who aren't frankly fans of ethanol, who think that it uses too much other things, water, food, to produce this fuel, whereas we should be focused more on electric energy or some other source?
Yeah, so it will take 17 years if we created a law that outlaws all gasoline cars. It'll take 17 years until gas ends up running out. And so we have plenty of time here. But the biggest thing when it comes to the Green New Deal, they didn't include rural. They didn't include farmers. And so that's why it's a no-starter for me. If we want to talk about how we can combat climate change, we get there by enforcing our antitrust laws. We have these multinational corporations who are dictating what's happening on our farm. They're driving out prices. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue has said, in America, the big get bigger and the small get out. And as a result, Roger Walker in Palo Alto County, he's the last dairy farmer. And we met him on our 374-town tour, and it's just heartbreaking. It's not the markets that have forced him off the farm. It is policies in D.C. And it doesn't matter if you have hundreds of acres or thousands of acres, you should have a chance to succeed.
All right, Tim and I are going to take a step back here, let you each play moderator. So Mr. Feenstra, you can ask Mr. Scholten a question if you'd like.
Oh, thank you. On February 5, 2019, you tweeted this: farmers can heal the environment and prosper with the Green New Deal. On February 18, 2019, you tweeted the Green New Deal would benefit farm families. You again have it on your website, an article that explains how great the Green New Deal is. You've taken money from all coastal liberals, from San Francisco to New York. You're endorsed by Elizabeth Warren, and you've been on a fundraiser with Bernie Sanders. So my question is this: why do you support the Green New Deal? You've just said it in tweet after tweet and along on your campaign website.
It says that's the potential of what it could be in the Green New Deal. And then once we had the caucus, so all those tweets you mentioned about happened early on in 2019. We had the caucus where things came out more and more. The Green New Deal was an idea at that time. And as it has come out, it's been clear they did not include rural. They did not include farmers at the seat at the table, and to me that's a no-starter. And so I've been clear on this, Randy. You have been lying in your ads. We had this conversation. In the Iowa Corn Growers Forum, I said I don't support this. And just 4 days later, you ran your first ad that's an attack on me that said this is what I support, and I don't support it. So here, listen to me. I don't support the Green New Deal. So if you had any ounce of integrity, you should take down that ad, because I don't know how much more clear I can be. Look at my issues page. My issue page has details on everything that I stand for, and it doesn't mention the Green New Deal. And so if we want to talk about environment and what we can do to combat climate change, that's something that's completely different. That's something where we need to enforce our antitrust laws. And that's something where we need to make sure that the monopolies quit ruining our family farms and the monopolies that you take money from, whether it's on the input side or on the output side. The money from Smithfield, you take money from Chinese-owned companies that are squeezing our farmers out, that are making our consumers pay more than they ever have for meat. They've they're suppressing the workers. They're getting the same wages that happened when my family moved to Sioux City from Nevada in 1984. And then they're also squeezing our farmers out. So don't come at me with that I support the Green New Deal, because I've been very damn clear.
Well, I'll just respond to that. I guess he didn't want to take his tweets down from February 5 and February 18. He didn't want to take it off his website that talked about the Green New Deal. He's taken millions and millions of dollars from liberal coastal elites from San Francisco and California. He's been buddy-buddy with Bernie Sanders. He's been endorsed by Elizabeth Warren. He had a $60,000 job, and that primary job was, that company was supporting the Green New Deal. So you can be disingenuous, you can challenge your integrity, but I'm just saying it's out there. It's real, and anybody can take a look at it.
All right. Do you have a question for him?
Yeah, I guess it goes along in the lines of, you know, rural America is struggling. We have our backs against the wall right now, and you see rural hospitals that are struggling because of the privatization of Medicaid, which you were for, and you have taken money from the MCOs. We've seen people having to ration drug prices, and you take money from these pharmaceutical companies. You've taken money from two different monopolies that are owned by China that are squeezing our farmers both on the input side and the market side. And then you have Congressman King saying that you are bought and paid for by billionaire coastal global elites. So how can you represent the district and the needs of the district when you haven't even been around the district, and you take money from all these entities that are taken away from our livelihoods?
I am proud to say that I have 2,900 contributors from Iowa, and they're all grassroots people. I love it that a lady just down the street came to me and said, Randy, here's $5 to help your campaign. I had a farmer in Hardin County that said, Randy, here's $150, because I know you're the person, you know on agriculture. Your family lives it. And he's right. I have taken money from so many people in the 4th District that believe in me because I can help them with ag. I can be the voice. I can be an effective voice. I don't take money from coastal elites and liberals that are on the East Coast and West Coast. I've been in the Iowa Senate for the last 12 years, and there's never a time, never one time, where any money has affected any of my votes. And I'll make sure I do the same in Congress.
All right, I want to ask you a question that's in the headlines these days right now. Pope Francis recently endorsed same-sex civil unions for the very first time as Pope. He did that while being interviewed. There's a feature-length film that's coming out. It's entitled Francisco, which he's the main player in. His quote was, "Homosexual people have the right to be in a family. They are children of God. What we have to have is a civil union law. That way, they are legally covered." So the simple question to both of you, starting with Mr. Scholten, do you agree with the Pope, and do you support civil unions?
I do, and I think we should be pushing marriage equality here in the United States. You know, this is something that I have so many friends. I remember when the lesbian couple, when I was a child, came to our church because they were kicked out of their church, and just trying to wrap my head around that. And what we've seen in the state of Iowa, being a leader in this, and then we have seen, even in my high school, the GSA program, the Gay Straight Alliance program that they have these days. My Sioux City East High School's Gay Straight Alliance won the best Gay Straight Alliance in the state of Iowa last year, and I'm proud of that. We didn't have that when I was going there. And so I think these are issues that we should continue to push forward.
Yeah, thank you for the question. My faith believes that we have to show the fruits of the Spirit. We have to show love and kindness, humbleness, and self-control. But I also believe what the Bible says is that marriage is between one man and one woman, and that's where I stand.
Is the Pope wrong, then?
I'll just say where I stand, and I stand that marriage is between one man and one woman.
Thinking back to your districts, and really this goes statewide, we have a housing situation where, particularly in the smaller communities, finding affordable housing can be almost next to impossible because the developments aren't really big enough at once, so you can attract developers to move in there and build these kind of homes that people can actually afford. Charlie Cowell had written in asking that, saying there's a housing crisis right now across the country, not enough supply and home prices that are rising faster than incomes. Mr. Feenstra, let's start with you on this. You know many places in your district where it's tough to find a house for a lot of people. How do you bring in that affordable houses, or maybe even retrofit some of the older ones to bring them up to date?
Absolutely. So I was just in Spencer, Iowa, and a couple years ago we created an incentive to help out rural communities to build homes, and it was a private-public partnership that we could eliminate some property taxes at the time, or to incentivize and say we're going to allow you to buy that home and give you a $10,000 loan. And this thing is just absolutely blossoming in Spencer. I see it in other parts of the 4th District, but what it does, it takes a private-public partnership that you let the private sector build the homes, but as a community, you can figure out ways to say, all right, we're going to give some incentives for those homes to be built, or we're going to give some incentives for people to buy those homes. But we can do this collaboratively. And if you look through the 4th District, this has happened time and time again. And I applaud the efforts that we did in the Iowa legislature to make this occur.
Is this best handled on the state or local level as opposed to federal?
The local level really can get hands-on on this and understand, but you can also create the capabilities at the federal level of some incentives that help the private sector, to help that private builder build houses, or to help continue to keep low interest rates. You think about right now, why are houses blossoming so much? Because our interest rates are so low and people can afford to build a new house.
All right, Mr. Schulten, what would you do?
You know, one of the things, and this is just part of my vision for this, but we have in the state of Iowa over 800 abandoned schools. And what we've seen, I know in Ames, they restored a school to make it into apartments, and I think that's something that we can do as part of the solution. But this is a bigger issue, and this is what we're seeing in the needs. And when I went to all 374 towns, and we're talking with small business owners, we're talking with corporations, and they're saying, you know, we couldn't handle a manufacturing in some of these counties because there's not housing for these people. And so this is something that we're seeing. People are having to travel further and further for care, further and further for their job, and it's wearing on a lot of people in the district.
Tim?
Let's talk about climate change here for a quick second. I don't know if the 9 inches of snow that parts of central Iowa got came because of climate change or not, but it's certainly something that a lot of people are talking about. One of our viewers sent in a question. Bernadette Siebert from in Ames, what are your hopes and plans for dealing with climate change? To both of you, beginning with Mr. Schulten, is climate change real first?
Yeah.
And give me an example of something that you would present.
Yeah, I mean, it is real. We're seeing, I believe in the science that talks about this. We see it in the state of Iowa. Last year, we had the horrible floods. This year, we had the derecho. And we're seeing more and more extreme weather. We had an unprecedented amount of wind in the past year, and they actually had to cancel harvests in certain counties because of the danger with the drought and wind. And so I think it's a two-step approach, like I mentioned before. We need to empower our farmers. And how do we do that? It's by enforcing our antitrust laws, allowing them to stay on their land, make a dime, and then they can make the decisions for them. So I think we should have an on-ramp and pay our farmers for their environmental services, pay them for cover crops, pay them for buffer strips and different things that would help sequester the carbon.
Yeah, I applaud our conservation boards and what they do in every county, and we've just got a ballot and you can vote for your conservation boards, and I'm telling you what, they do the real work. They help farmers and they work with farmers to create buffer strips and create terraces and do secondary crops. These are all wonderful things, and they're voluntary. You know, I think in agriculture in the 4th District, every farmer is looking to how can we create a cleaner environment? How can we create a better environment? And that's what I'm all about. What can we do better? You know, you think about ethanol. Ethanol is the cleanest form of energy in the world. You think about that little piece of corn that has all that energy in it, and all we do is squeeze it and we get it out. We've got to be trumpeting and passionately talking about not only ethanol, but biodiesel, biofuels, and all the wind that we're producing. And we have to figure out transmission lines that we can get it to other places. And then we also have solar. We have so many things that are going on in the 4th District when it comes to clean energy and the opportunity to have a cleaner environment. And that's where I want to continue to be the voice in those areas.
All right, we have just a couple of minutes left here, so I want to leave you time for closing comments here. If you could each take about a minute, 15, minute and a half here to sum up your feelings, but specifically address your comments, please, at the independents in your area, which big picture are probably going to decide on which one of you two will win this. Mr. Schulten, I believe it's your turn to go first.
All right. So first of all, thank you so much for having us. And my campaign has traveled to all 374 towns. I've held over 100 town halls where we invite everybody. And I listen to people who will never vote for me and people who will always vote for me and everywhere in between. And this district has so much potential. We could be the epicenter of 21st century resilient agriculture. But then we also see the other side of things. We see more concentration, more foreign ownership, and that's sucking the wealth out of our rural communities, and our main streets are not doing too well. We see the tax bill that gave all this incentive to huge corporations and investments. Well, it's leaving our main streets behind. And so we need to challenge. We need somebody who can take on the status quo. I mean, you heard my comments about what Republicans in the district already think of Randy, and he has, again, have these policies that have hurt rural Americans, whether it's taking money from the MCOs that have privatized Medicaid and hurt rural hospitals, hurt disabilities, and hurt just the senior citizens. We've seen Iowans having to ration their medicine. We can't have a candidate, we can't have a member of Congress who has sold out the American people, the American worker, and the American farmer. My name's J.D. Schulten, and I'm asking you for two things. One, for your vote, and two, to make sure that you pray to make sure my RV makes it to November 3rd.
Mr. Feenstra.
Thank you so much for holding this debate tonight. Thank you, J.D., for participating in the debate. I am an effective, proven leader that has gotten it done time and time again. I've gotten it done in the Iowa Senate, where I wrote and authored and passed the largest income tax reduction bill in state history, giving everyone extra $1,000 or more in their pockets. I helped the farming community, expanding ethanol and making sure that our first-time farmers have incentive to continue that farm for the next generation. I made sure that we eliminated the grain bin tax. I made sure that we expanded health care with Farm Bureau on creating new plans in the health care arena. I will do the same in Congress. And also in Congress, I'll fight for every one of you. I'll fight against government-run health care. I will fight against the Green New Deal. And I will make sure that everyone is secure in having Social Security and Medicare. And I want to expand these programs to make sure that my children and the generation ahead of us also have that. I'm Randy Feenstra, and I will deliver results for each and every person in the 4th District.
All right, a couple seconds left here. Mr. Feenstra, if we had your wife out here and we said, what's the best quality Randy's going to bring to D.C., it is?
Collaborating with others, because he loves his children and he talks to them every day.
All right, Mr. Schulten, if we brought your girlfriend out here, no ring yet, I don't believe, but if we brought your girlfriend out here, what'd she say?
She'll know that I'm a fighter.
All right, J.D. Schulten, Randy Feenstra, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming down here. Thank you for watching this 4th Congressional District debate. Of course, early voting well underway. The big election that you can say in your sleep, you know the date, November the 3rd. Thanks for joining us.